Good morning. Most important thing about this video that I want you to remember, November 5th is our date to get those back. If you decide to participate in this, I think they call it the Operation Christmas Child, have those shoe boxes back on November the 5th. So I encourage you as a family to do this. We've participated in the past with other churches that we've been involved in. So really just grab one of the boxes, fill it up. If you got any questions, we'll actually have some ladies after service to be able to give you some more information about this mission. So, good morning officially. My name is Michael, and we are a group of believers here at One Missoula. Normally, I get to see or meet any new faces that come in due to some different circumstances. This morning, I did not get to do host and greeting team today. So, if you've got any questions about our group of believers, if this is your first time visiting with us, please come and see me after service. I would love to shake your hand, know why you showed up. I'm really just a curious guy, and I love my role as a host and greeter. So up front, so we are a young church. We were started with a group of just a few families that met together in someone's house and progressed to a hotel conference room, over into the AMC, and then just recently, less than a year, we've been at this building, this location. So we're excited to be blessed with this incredible location. I was reading or speaking with someone this week. The reserve, you probably know, the 2 miles in between here is the busiest road in the entire state of Montana. So pretty blessed that we're able to be right here with this location. So like I said, my name is Michael. I am normally not the guy up here. Brad, our full-time minister, our lead pastor here, him and his family they're out of town this week. I wish I could tell you that he is on a island in the Bahamas or in the Caribbean somewhere because he just loves the beach, but that is not the case. He is with Margaret's family. Margaret, and all their kids are doing a, family retreat with Margaret's family this week. I'm hoping they get some downtime, get to spend some time with their family, their grandparents, the kids, grandkids, cousins. I need to introduce myself. I've been saying I'm Michael, but I need to tell you who I am. So I am not trained in biblical theology. I am not a minister. My background is in anesthesia. My wife and I were nurse anesthetists in the South. And we changed careers and got into real estate investments. I own and operate a small, management company that takes care of our properties in the South. Now, I took the easy job. My wife actually decided to change careers, and she opened up a private charter school for very select individuals. She also runs a full-time catering business, restaurant, environmental services. She opened up a time management consulting agency, and those very specific clientele that I was telling you about is my daughter Sawyer, Ryder, and Jet. They are extremely picky eaters and difficult to deal with. Luckily, I am the easiest one, laid back, never need anything extra. So we have been a part of this body of believers here at One Missoula for about 2 years. And Brad asked me and challenged me to speak today. So last week, Mike Coriel, who's also going to do communion again for us, he mentioned something, and he said, I'm a little nervous when I get up to speak. And I want to tell you, Mike, you're not alone. There are, it's actually 75% of the entire population of America is utterly and totally fearful of getting up to speak. So it's kind of a healthy adrenaline for you. It's a good thing you're not alone, Mike. I actually brought today the most nervous person to get up and to speak in the entire U.S. It's my wife. She, all week, has been debating if she was even going to come into service today or she was going to just volunteer in kids ministry, because she's going to be nervous just by proxy, because she knows all of my, I guess, imperfections, my dyslexic reading sometimes. So she's worried me all week. Well, what if this happens? Well, what if this happens? So she, Mike, she's got you beat. So she's nervous just by me being up here. So over the next few minutes, we're going to be looking at a story. This story has an influence on me because it affects my story. And from your handout, you probably can see it's the parable of the talents. The reason this parable is so personal for me is because I was called out on it. After years of Holly and I putting in double shifts and triple shift calls and really investing our time and energy into learning and understanding real estate, we decided we would like to move to Montana and catch our breath. Our kids were getting bigger. We had invested in a ton of time and assets into getting to our portfolio to how it looks. And I wanted to just coast a little bit. I wanted to spend my weekends skiing down the slopes. I wanted to spend my springs catching things out of the water. My summer, I wanted to go rafting all the time. I wanted to hike up things and bike down things and play because I deserved it. We put in the time. It was my reward. I felt like it was a reasonable plan. We put in the effort. We were ready to reap the reward. But I was on a phone call with a friend, a mentor. He's not from here. He's an older gentleman, really old. And he can really boldly speak into my life because of his personality. And both of our personalities are very similar. And so he's very good at poking me where I need to get poked. And he encouraged me to step up, to get involved, to take responsibility. And I told this gentleman, I said, look, I'm not equipped for that. I don't want to get wrapped up into somebody else's mess. They created that mess, not me. I did what I was supposed to do. I followed the rules. I don't want to get messed up in there. And I can remember he does really good. He paused for about 3 seconds, and 3 seconds is a long time on a phone call. And he told me, as long as you can stand before God and give an account of what he gave you, that's all you, Mike. Because this is what really stuck. He said, because Jesus called fishermen, probably teenagers, to carry out his mission and to change eternity and change where people spend eternity. So, Mike, that's you. Because, Mike, I think you are more than a fisherman. So Brad, being out of town, asked me to speak, and I was very envious of Brad's last message series. And one of the reasons I was just loving it is because I'm a huge Elon Musk fan. I don't know his Christian background, but he's so intense. He has such a drive. He's so intentional about his business. And I was so impressed that Brad got this together with the team to do a video for Elon, with Elon Musk. I told Brad, Brad, that was the best sermon. 50% of your sermon was the video. He's like, well, thanks, Mike, because I didn't do any of that part. But I said, well, look, I'm going to speak. You want me to speak? I want a really good budget to do this awesome video, like an intro video for me. He said, Mike, look, you're right. Whatever you want. No, what that means was I can spend whatever I want on my video. So I did that. I got with our team, and I said, look, guys, I don't care what it costs. Brad says we have an unlimited budget. I want the best actors. I want to be on these amazing sets. We are going to do an incredible video to intro the parable of the talents. You're going to recognize some of these actors. These actors, actually, these are been around since my childhood. This is who the action figures that I played with when I was a kid. These actors are top notch. We went all out. Brad has not got the final bill yet. But just a few days ago, we were wrapping up this film. We sent everybody home. And we brought it to Eric. And if you don't know Eric sits in the back. All that black curtain, there's a bunch of buttons back there. There's just one important button he hits, and he's in charge. And he gets the final say on these videos. And he watched it, and he was crying. He said, this is going to be incredible. This is going to be great, except one thing, Mike, it's too long. So, just the last few hours, we called everybody back. We revamped the video. And we got it down to Eric's required time. Now, he's tough. 1 minute. So, for the next minute, I need you dialed in. I need you focused. Wake your spouse up. This is the only time they need to be awake this entire sermon, okay? We got 60 seconds of intense awesomeness. Rob, you're burning my seconds up already. It's the anticipation is what it is. The anticipation of this video. Hold your breath. Rob, this is like the whole, I get to quit after the 60 seconds. That's the lights. This is the other button. You know, I come up here and practice, and I got it all down, and I said, man, I'm going to be one that screws everything up, you know, because I'm the one that this is not my jam normally. And it wasn't me this time. Rob, you mean keep going, or are we going to be able to provide this $1 million film? Oh, man, maybe we can squeeze it in a little bit. Okay, so we're just going to, dive into the story. We're going to dive into the parable of the talents this morning. And in our story, this comes from Matthew, okay? This is from the book of Matthew. And I'm going to just read it this morning. So Here's the things I want you to point out. I want to point out when we're reading through it. It says, I want you to think about how we expect in this world God to interact with our resources and our experiences and our talents and our opportunities that he's given us, okay? While many people think that God doesn't care about such earthly things, God reveals in this parable the exact opposite. I'm going to read it for us. This is going to be from, we might have it up there. This is coming from Matthew. It's in your handout as well. So, for it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted them to his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, each one according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid the master's money. Now after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here, I have made 5 talents more. And his master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of the master. And he who also had 2 talents came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here, I have made 2 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of the master. He also, who had received 1 talent, came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and I hid your talent in the ground. Here is what is yours. But the master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I have gathered where I have not sown and scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But for the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So to recap this scene, Jesus is depicting a wealthy individual going on a long trip, and he's entrusting his talents with 3 of his servants. So since we didn't have the video, I'm going to recap this. Rich master going away on a trip, leaving his talents in the possession of his servants. I want to define something for us this morning, a talent. A talent in the English language, we have a very poor translation, or we don't have a rich verbiage with the English language, we use words interchangeably. In the Old Testament they were able to describe things so much better. So here, our situation is a talent. Some translations say it's silver or gold or bag of gold. So for us, we're going to just call it the U.S. dollar, Okay, we all are on the same page, the US dollar. In some of the commentaries I've read, the value of this talent was equivalent to 20 years of a day servant's wages. A lot of money. So translate it to today's dollars, about $1 million per talent. Regardless of what that number or what that amount is, Jesus is trying to prove a point that this is an extremely valuable talent, extremely large amount of money. And I think this is how God sees our opportunities, our resources, our time that He's given to us, our treasure, for us to leverage that for the glory of God and the good of others. So in our story, everyone was given a talent. Everyone was given a talent according to their ability. And the master is expecting his servants to be very resourceful and produce an outcome. They want to take their time, their experience, and take the master's talent and deliver a result. And I want to explore this morning something called stewardship, the ideal of stewardship. The servant oversaw the asset. He was in charge of the asset, but he was not the owner of that asset. He was not owner of that talent. I read a story recently about the Rockefeller family. And John D. Rockefeller created this vast amount of wealth 100 years ago. And how the family has still been able to keep that wealth intact and have grown that wealth to really, really large fortune. And their reason they're able to do that is because they had really good money managers that were in charge of their wealth. And this is kind of what we're looking at. Recently, Brad did a series on of Joseph, and this was in the summer. And Joseph, if you don't know the story, this is in the Old Testament, was his brothers sold him into slavery, and he ended up in Egypt. And he was in jail, and then long story short, he was in Potiphar's house. And because of his devotion to God, he was put in charge of Potiphar's estate, Potiphar's household. Let me read an excerpt. It says that from the time he was put in charge of the household and all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. So Joseph was the steward of, in charge of the household, but it wasn't his assets. It wasn't his treasure. And this is what's happening here in this parable. The servants were the overseers of the assets, but they were not the owner of the assets. Every Christian is on mission. Every one of us is in the ministry, brought into His vision. And we are called to be stewards of God's talents. Matthew 9:37 says, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into His harvest field." If you remember the man that received those 5 talents quickly went at once and started developing or growing the master's talents that he was given. The first two servants, they were not plugged in to their Nintendo. They were not on a 14-hour binge of Netflix or whatever the show is. I think I used the show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, but Brad said that was so outdated. He's like, nobody's going to get that. And so, sorry, that was my only example I had. But really, these guys were not like me wanting to coast through life. The first two servants were actively engaging, using their time, their talent to increase what the master had given them. So when the master returns, he would be pleased. When Jesus was here on earth, he was on mission. He was dialed in doing the will of the Father. And I think it's important for us to grasp that the bigger picture that Jesus is illustrating is not the money. The money is just a metaphor or an illustration for us in our lives about just how important our gifts that God gives us really are. You remember I told you he called fishermen? He called fishermen to change the world. And because of those fishermen, there are people that are spending eternity with Christ instead of in hell. That's the seriousness of our talents that we've been given. How will we fare? How will we fare when our master comes? He says, I came to you and I gave you these opportunities. I put you on mission. And how did you use the wealth of assets that I entrusted to you to serve me? What is my return on investment? Now I feel like we're kind of coming to the most jarring point of the parable. It's in verse 24. It says, he who had received the 1 talent came forward saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. I was afraid, and I went out and hid your talent in the ground. Here's what's yours. But the master answered him, you wicked and slothful servant. The owner's coming back. The master has not forgot about his talents. He hasn't forgot about the assets that he's entrusted to us. We will be held accountable. Now, Michael, maybe you say, Michael, you don't know my situation. You don't know my spouse. You don't know my family or my job. It's not me that you're answering to. It's God. God is the one that gave us our talents. God is the one that knows where you started. It's encouraging to me that the 5 talents, the one that got 5 talents and the one that got 2 talents got the same reward. I'm in that 2-talent guy. I'm not Elon. I don't have spaceships. I'm the 2-talent guy, and I get to have the ability to have the same reward. I often help or counsel, I hate to see that because that sounds so official, but help individuals, advise individuals or families with their finances. And a comment that I hear often is, well, I just can't afford that. Or I don't have time for that. Or I don't have the ability or talent for that. Not me. You don't have to answer to me. I'm usually pretty blunt with them and say, don't fool yourself. Don't lie to yourself. So many people choose the easy path with their finances or their relationships. You're held accountable to the master. You're not held accountable to me. Luke 12:48 says, to much is given, much will be required. He calls us to be alert and live in a way to be ready for the return of the master. In our parable, the master was gone, it says, a long time. But he will be back to settle his accounts. We will be held accountable for the gifts that God has entrusted to us. I want you to picture all of the things that God has invested in you. And you're going to have to stand, we are going to have to stand accountable. Did you sit on it? Did you bury it? Did you coast through life like I wanted to do? I came across an impactful quote from a preacher. I put it in your handout. It says, our greatest fear should not be a failure, but of succeeding at things in life that don't really matter. God has called us to use our time and our treasure and our talents and the gifts that He has given us for Him. This morning, there's a quote that Brad uses for his family that I think I skipped over. And Brad says, whatever situation we're involved in, whatever place we go, we make it better. And this morning, I hope in some way what I've said or what I've done will make it better for you. Over the next minute, I want you to just close your eyes for a second. And I want you to think about the talent and the treasure that He's given you. We will be held accountable. Do you want to hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of the master"? Or, "You wicked, lazy servant, enter into darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth"? What do you want me to do, God? How do you want me to use my talent and the treasure that you've given me to serve you? Just be honest with yourself and take inventory. Just keep your eyes closed. We're going to start a song here in just a second. And we've also set this time aside for our believers, our body of believers that will partake of the communion. I beg you to use your talents wisely because you're going to be held accountable. We will be held accountable.